Welcome to the Nerdist Podcast number 752. If you're a regular listener to the podcast, you're probably saying, but Chris Hardwick, wasn't the last episode 752 with Dirk Allborn and Bebop Gresta? Well, I did say that, yes. But I was lying to you. Unintentionally, though. It was a clerical error. And I just mean it was like a bookkeeping error, not like a cleric came in and cast a create water spell and I drown in my own ignorance. Which would be one way to look at it. So, but you know what? I like mistakes. Mistakes are fun. The imperfections of life are what make life interesting. So, I guess let's just say there's two 752s now, technically. I hope you're having a nice week. This podcast is going out Wednesday. It's the middle of the week. If you subscribe to a basic work week, maybe that's the middle of your week. I don't know. I don't know if you're listening to this on a Wednesday. Are you? Don't answer that. I can't hear you. But you can say, you know what, how about this? I'm going to give you the opportunity to answer so that it feels like we're actually having a conversation. Oh, what day is it that you're listening to the podcast? Oh, my uncle listens to it that day too. See, I tried to make it personalized so that it felt like we were having a conversation. I hope that made you feel more loved and supported this week. I have some Nerdist Community Corkboard stuff to tell you about. The Nerdist Community Corkboard, just fill in a song here in your head, whatever the song is. If you want to submit a song, you can submit a jingle if you want, or I'll just go, Nerdist Community Corkboard, like old-timey radio. Okay, this says, this is from Ricky Bagwell. Hello, our gaming group 417 Gamers is teaming with local gaming store, Metagames Unlimited, to have a newbie night on Saturday, November 14th in Springfield, Missouri. We'll be playing and teaching gateway games. This will be an easygoing night for people to come out and have fun, meet new people, and learn a new game for $4. This will be an easygoing night for people to come out and have fun, meet new people, and learn a game or $4. People can just bring themselves and a friend if they like. We'll be teaching and playing from 5 to 10 p.m. For more info, hit our Facebook page up at facebook.com/417gamers or meetup at meetup.com/417gamers. P.S. Enjoy your burrito. P.P.S. You enjoy your burrito, Ricky. Also, all right, Katie submitted this one. Which, it's adorable. It's adorable. I don't know why I feel like I have to let you know it's Katie. You know, Katie is the best friend to every animal in the world, and so she submitted this podcast for me to tell you about, which is, Brooke writes, my friend Justin created Purrcast, a podcast of cats purring. All right. I'm kind of on board with this, actually. Every episode features one of his cats or friends' cats purring, along with stories about each cat and their awesomeness. Justin also happens to rescue cats and is a foster with Barks, helping sweet furry kitties find forever homes. Check him and the kitties out, purrcast.com. You know, I feel like it's a good idea. I feel like Purrcast makes a tremendous amount of sense now. There's a lot of negative news out there. So if you happen to watch the news or read a newspaper and then you start shaking to your core because you feel like every generation does, that we're totally screwed in the face, listen to Purrcast and let some purring kitties make it all better for you. That is a fantastic idea. This episode is Brian Grazer returns. He was just on the podcast not long ago, but he returns with his friend and partner, Ron Howard, who was rad. You know, it's so nice to meet one of your heroes and they turn out to be super rad. I don't know, there was some sort of weird Happy Days curse where everyone who was ever on that show seems to be super awesome, because Henry Winkler was rad, Ron Howard was amazing, and Ron and Brian were both fantastic together. And when you look at the wide berth of things they produce, and until you look at the IMDb page and go, oh, they did that, these guys, I was so in awe of them, and Ron is just the friggin' best. And Brian Grazer is a wealth of knowledge from people that he's interviewed over the years. So I want them to come back as a team again and just chat some more.
This episode is brought to you by Mozilla.org, the new Firefox. Fast for good. Mozilla builds products, technology, and programs that make the internet a little bit healthier of a place. Since using it helps Mozilla grow a healthier internet for everyone, you get to do good too and contribute. Learn more and download the new Firefox 2 times faster at mozilla.org.
Here's the Nerdist Podcast. That's the other 752 with Ron Howard and Brian Grazer. Katie, roll the Purrcast.
Now entering Nerdist.com.
guys, Brian, you were just on not that long ago, and Ron, it is wonderful to see you. And
to be on.
You guys are the main thing that you guys are promoting right now is the GE Breakthrough Project, which I believe premieres November 1st on National Geographic.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 9 p.m. if my brain is being useful today. But essentially, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's people who are making incredible scientific breakthroughs, and there's a lot of different guest directors,
right?
Paul Giamatti and Angela Bassett and
right? Pete Berg.
Peter Berg. Oh wow, yeah.
Brett Ratner.
And so, what was it? Where did the project come from, and why did you guys decide to get on board?
Kind of initiated with Brian in an original conversation, and then it evolved through really quickly through some really good meetings over there.
Yeah, but basically, as you know, because you've interviewed me, I have this curiosity discipline that I do every 2 weeks. Well, Beth Comstock, who's vice chairman of GE, does a similar thing, kind of with a different demographic. All young people, really like young tech, but she's a really cool person, and I've known her a while. She works for Jeff Immelt, who's CEO of who I also know of GE, and they're both cool, curious, generous, regular people, even though they're, running this $300 billion company. And so they approached me basically, Beth, after a curiosity conversation she and I were having. We talked about maybe doing 30-second spots. I said, I don't think so. Let me think about it. And then I started thinking about how I romantically kind of look at GE when it was Thomas Edison and when he created, electricity and found multiple uses for it. And I said, I'll do that. And then we just created this idea called Breakthrough, which would be like 30 for 30s, these independent shows.
But for science.
Exactly.
That's the pitch.
It's 30 for 30, yeah, for science. I mean, being someone who doesn't really watch sports, I go for science. Oh, yeah, okay, I'm in. I'm totally in. Because there's so many... especially now, we're so addicted to. I feel like our culture is addicted to advancement. We expect advancement at any given moment.
Really interesting point. Yeah. And I think you're right. And what quickly evolved was the idea of not so much looking back, but really looking forward at this moment. And humanizing it, and this is sort of where we come in, is in terms of wanting to celebrate individuals who are actually investing their lives in making these kinds of breakthroughs. So it's sort of understanding where the science is, understanding what the problems are, what the crisis is, to use the dramatic narrative term,
sure.
And then here are the protagonists who are trying to act upon that, so that's the way we began to shape it, and that's one of the reasons that we, instead of going to documentarians to oversee each individual one, we went to narrative storytellers, and to sort of to infuse it with that kind of focus on story, really, which is what we're always about.
Yeah, we would find there's so many, by the way, problems on the planet, and so we would curate those as we did our first 6, and then we're going to do more, and then we find people, human beings that are in the middle of these crises and problems that are creating solutions. So you don't have to worry. There's hope here.
I know. Well, I'm a person that I feel like I foolishly do this thing that most human beings do, where I go, I probably shouldn't have a cheeseburger today, but in 30 years, they'll just replace my blood because, I'm really playing the long game on technology. I'm like, science, we'll be fine, and I worry that maybe that's not entirely the case. So, where are the biggest breakthroughs? Is it specific technologies that are exciting to you, or is it? Because I feel like there should be an advancement in infrastructure to handle emerging technology.
It's one of the things that kind of came to light in the one that I directed, which is about aging. And it's much more immediate because you're dealing with a lot of people who can't look 30 years down the road,
right?
And yet many people who do. And so there is that question of do you keep pushing that one sort of down the road, kicking that can down the road, or do you address it now? And for that very reason, it's been really difficult on a kind of an institutional level and on a governmental level to even look at it as a particular issue. And this is the thing that was sort of surprising, is that there are technologies, there's drugs that are beginning to promise this possibility that you can not attack just diabetes, not just look at cancer, but in fact, deal with aging as an idea. Well, it turns out the FDA doesn't know what to do with that. We sort of stumbled into this really interesting, problem. They're sympathetic, like any human being would be, but they sort of they don't know quite how to cope with it, and it's up to science to sort of prove that this holistic approach, and when I say holistic, I don't necessarily mean Chinese herbs,
right?
But a total body
the whole approach,
is worth tackling. And so
soundbites, Ron.
It became a human interest story.
No, actually, that's. First of all, I just want to go back and make the point that I think most people don't understand what the word holistic actually means, and I think you're right. I think it has become synonymous with that, but it really does mean everything as like you're dealing with the whole thing from top to bottom, and aging is one of those interesting topics where I go, well, if they could cure aging, is that a good thing, or is it like being able to use your cell phone on a plane? Like, it sounds like it'd be good, but then you'd have to hear someone talking on the. And, fuck.
And we deal with that controversy and all of the stories. In fact, Brian was always pushing for that as a good storyteller that he is, to tell as many sides as we could. Still, what we really have is a very cool, kind of personalized, brief look at the issue now and what's these crises and what science is doing, to try to tackle them. And it is kind of heroic because we believe people who are dedicated themselves to that are they're making sacrifices and taking big risks.
So when you go in as a director for something like this, I mean, when you have a scripted project, I assume you know where it's going to go. Most of the time, right? At least you have a script and an idea.
Well, there's a rough outline in this case, but when you're doing a documentary, you do have to be ready to take advantage of what you find.
And you don't know. So when you're going into this, what is your thought? I mean, do you have a hypothesis or something that you want to prove, or do you say, I'm just going to go into this and see where it leads me?
This one was very much see where it leads me, and beginning with the research. So we had a kind of a point of view by the time we were starting to shoot, but we still didn't really know about these scientists who were right this moment kind of struggling to get this idea through. And there's a line of narration, and I happen to be the narrator. Some people think it's science sounding an awful lot like Arrested Development. But I wound up being the narrator.
So Michael Bluth is trying to fight aging.
The FDA. Reluctant to hear what the Bluths, the elite science. Well, anyway.
And that's where Barry Zuckerkorn comes in to defend the FDA. But how do you know when you're done? When you're investigating this and you feel like, well, there are infinite possibilities. How do you know when you've completed the story?
Run out of money.
Air dates and no money left. It could go on and on and on. But that's why these things did become kind of snapshots. Let's get these people with a point of view. Let's come in. And by the way, I got to say, GE very helpful. And to be honest, not all about GE. All about science. Mm-hmm. And and where GE is doing something interesting, they'd let us know and we could cover that, and where somebody else is, that's exciting too.
Yeah, that was definitely the cool at point of inception when we all came up with this, worked on it together. GE was super cool about it because they're involved in probably 100 of these different types of kind of medical science type problem solving equations, their company. And they're very conscientious about it, but they made a point to say, we don't want to be in it. We don't want to be the protagonist. We don't want to say GE's fixing it, even though they are working on it. And also, like very good friend of mine named Andy Conrad is a geneticist. He runs Google X which is like 250 scientists and doctors all over the world, like working to solve problems like this. So none of these people, they're kind of like, the way we approached astronauts and firemen, they're sort of selfless kind of heroes in a way. And they don't really feel like they have to be protagonists in this. But I think it's good for GE. It's good for, companies that care about have a social consciousness and are interested. But it's cooler when they don't want to have to be the person solving the problem.
And I'd also say that on a creative level, on a storytelling level, the National Geographic execs and the people weighing in there were extremely conscientious. And it was sort of like, yeah, you guys are great storytellers, but we got to get the science right. And they were very, just holding everything to a particular standard. So for me, this is an exciting time for our company in terms of the way the various mediums are broadening out and the way programming is shifting and changing, the tastes are evolving. It's just giving people like Brian and I and a chance to work on a lot of different things and grow from that. It's really great.
Yeah, I mean, like the hip thing is that this is a moment right now, and it's going to continue where it's very empowering for artists, storytellers. There was a shift, and there's always some sort of shift in show business, of course, right? Where the corporation, the movie companies and the television networks were really dominating control of what the narratives themselves would be. And now it's sort of shifting because platforms are there are more of them, and they're oddly enough becoming agnostic.
Sure.
So it's the artists that are driving what the value of the platform and the story itself, and the story connection to the consumer is becoming more direct.
Sure, because the gatekeeper changed.
Yeah,
the
the gatekeeper changed.
And they're
it's
still changing.
Yeah, and even, of course, on our show Empire, I mean, that wasn't supposed to happen, but it changed the landscape of Fox. Certainly.
I annoyed a lot of people because obviously Empire trends every week that it's on, and I will tweet facts about The Empire Strikes Back and tag it Empire.
That is so funny.
And people are like, why are you, just because I'm like, oh, well, Empire's trending, so, oh, Han's frozen in carbonite, what are they going to do? Hashtag Empire. And then just to see how many people
I picked up that one. I saw that one. Did you?
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I was, because
I'm an Empire fan.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And I think Force Awakens might give us some more of that feeling that Empire gave us.
I'm really excited about the trailers.
It looks so good. Still can't trick me into watching football to watch the trailer tonight. I'll just see it online. But Ron, how are you such a nice, normal guy? I mean, you started in television in the 50s when it seems like that was a period of time where they were like, oh, we let the kids out of their cages a couple hours a day. And then, before people really started understanding what the effects on young people could be and the pressures, and particularly at that time. So how are you such a nice, normal, having worked for all this time in the business?
Well, you could ask Brian how nice and normal he thinks I really am.
You're nice.
Well, I think it sort of comes back to I think my parents in a lot of ways. My dad's this unbelievably grounded guy. He's an actor, so it was never dazzling, particularly to him. He's a character actor. Rance Howard, still at it. He doesn't like me to say his age, but it's kind of fantastic how much he's working at this point in his life. And I think because growing up, two things. One, I just liked it. I just always liked it. I liked being around it. I liked being around the storytelling, the creative problem solving. As a little kid, I found it fascinating, and I was sort of allowed to witness it and be a part of it. It was a very collegial kind of creative vibe on the Andy Griffith Show. So I didn't have that when I would go be in a movie like The Music Man or something. But around the Andy Griffith Show, I could see this energy and all this laughter and all this hard work, and it was adding up to a #1 television show. And so I was sort of learning a way to work that was really useful. And then the other thing was that I would see my dad out there going up on auditions, writing TV shows, sometimes getting the job, mostly not, but loving it, loving the process. And the combination of those two things, I think, gave me a sense of perspective that was pretty healthy and just allowed me to keep chasing the dream and understanding also that I was really fortunate to be there.
Gosh, but you're so lucky that you didn't have the kind of actor dad who was like, how much did you make this week?
Yeah,
that wasn't competitive with you in any way.
There's a lot of luck in this. I mean, unbelievable about that. And and even when I was younger, my first things that I directed, he and I would co-wrote.
Grand Theft Auto.
He and I co-wrote that, and then a couple things, TV movies. He was involved as a producer. I wanted him in there. And then when I started to evolve to another level and started partnering with people like Brian and stuff like that, he would never once said, what's my role in that? It was.
Oh, yes, he did. You don't know that, but I handed that guy.
You bought him out?
I gave him a pretty thick stack of hundreds. You know?
I mean, it's just, to be on television, to be on a show like The Andy Griffith Show, or even Happy Days, there's nothing that really exists like it anymore because of the way that entertainment is so fragmented. And that to be on a show that literally 50, 60, 70 million people would watch is a staggering thought.
Yeah, well, it is, and that has changed, and yet the making of the shows hasn't changed much. I mean, it's just still those same set of challenges and the same creative energy, and I think. When you get into something like Breakthrough, or I did the Jay-Z documentary a couple of years ago, and I'm starting to move into this documentary world. Brian had been at it for a while with Beyond the Mat and Deep Throat, and but it's really exciting because I've learned that I can actually apply a lot that I've learned a lot of my experiences and as a storyteller to these documentaries, and without distorting them, without having a script ahead of time.
And you also saw Scorsese do it, who's someone that you like a lot and you believe in. And
Spike Lee and Jonathan Demme.
I mean, because it's an incredibly brave move. At least it seems like an incredibly brave move to leave a show like Happy Days to launch a directing career. I mean, to leave it was legitimately for people, because I'm of an age where I watched it when it was in first run. Was the biggest sitcom at the time. to leave the biggest show at the time to go, I'm just going to go try this other thing, was a pretty amazing move.
I thought that was pretty crazy because we met while he was
still on this show,
and I didn't really even know he had these grand expectations or hopes of being, a director, much less a master filmmaker, winning Oscars and stuff. I had no idea. I just thought he's a really cool guy. He emanates this sort of sense of goodness that everybody gets to you receive it when you're around him. He has this aura that I felt, but I didn't know he had this deep sense of commitment to doing this. And when he left, it was really controversial. I mean, it was kind of an explosive moment for Happy Days.
For me, it was just I had this fire in the belly. I mean, I was yearning to do it before I went to Happy Days. I left USC Film School to do Happy Days. I thought it was a good job, and it went on and on and on. And I got married very young. Cheryl and I married at 21, and I remember working very hard on the show and realizing that I had done nothing about advancing my directing for about a year. And so I bought a moviola and set it in our apartment right there where you just couldn't miss it. And my thinking was every day that I walk in and out, I want to see the moviola with no film on it.
Just to remind you.
Just to remind me. And so I was just committed to it. And I was directing during the hiatus, but I also realized that if I was going to become a feature director, I couldn't be doing it in the 3 months that I had off. I needed to really be available.
It's so important for people to understand that, because particularly culture now, I feel like people are so money obsessed about things, and they go, well, if you have money, then it shouldn't matter. And it's like, but you still need to enjoy what you're doing.
That's right.
At a certain point, there's no amount of money that's going to make you any happier if you're not doing what you're doing.
Well, in fact, we all know a lot of people with plenty of money
that are
who are miserable, and it's
trapped in their money,
kinda, And George Lucas, who's always been a bit of a mentor and has made vast sums, and early on, like right after, I don't know, Empire Strikes Back, probably. I remember talking to him, and he said, money's really an interesting thing. It's great to feel secure. It's great to know you can go on vacation. It's great to have a car that you like to drive, and to know that if anybody in your family needs medical care, you can help facilitate that. So beyond that, the luxury tax you pay for the other stuff is almost debilitating, and so it's easy for folks with fat bank accounts to say, I suppose, but he's always had a kind of perspective and a wisdom, even on his own wealth, and I think there's just something to that.
Well, yeah, and when you look back, I think it was the best decision for you to make because. You could have been stuck on the show for a while longer, and who knows what would have happened at that point. You really had to, and I have to say, Night Shift is probably one of my favorite comedies of all time.
We shot Night Shift here.
Are you serious? At Hollywood Center? You shot this here?
Yeah.
Bill Blazkowski?
You bet.
Oh, come on. I had no idea. That's amazing.
Feed mayonnaise to tuna fish. Right over there.
Yes. Call Starkist. I mean, that movie, it was such a... And the fact that... You play the saxophone player, right? You play the saxophone player when...
Faked the saxophone.
Yeah, you play the saxophone player where Henry Winkler is just... Oh, he's such a nice guy. He writes a check. But you could have put yourself in the movie, and you didn't. So why the decision to pull your face off of camera?
Well, I had been in the first movie that I did. That's the only way I could get it going was the Roger Corman Grand Theft Auto,
right.
and I pretty much hated it. And
the movie made a lot of money, though.
It did well. No, I didn't hate the movie.
Yeah.
I didn't like being in it.
Right.
And this was Brian's idea and his baby, and we got this script going that was kind of a miracle. And I don't think I was the right guy for it, and I don't think Brian ever would have, even as a producer, wanted me to do it.
Well, I had two projects. One was I'd written a really bad draft of Splash, the man falling in love with a mermaid,
yep.
And the other was a call girl ring running out of the New York City morgue, which was a real R-rated idea because it involves prostitution.
Right.
So I wanted him to do the mermaid, but he absolutely didn't want to do that. He said, "Look, I'm off." Andy Griffith, Happy Days. I'm changing my image, man. I'm not doing this. I'll do the other one. I'll do Night Shift.
If I'm going to do a comedy, I want to do an R-rated.
And if actually, when you look back at Night Shift now, it's really not that R-rated. Especially by today's standards, I feel like it's kind of like PG-13 maybe.
Behind the scenes, it certainly wasn't it, Ron?
For some of us.
I mean, just Henry Winkler and Michael Keaton and Shelley Long and Richard Belzer. I mean, it's like... It's just such an amazing cast.
Brian produced the hell out of that movie to get that movie going. And it was really the beginning of our friendship because it was so exciting and so nerve-wracking. But it was also, of course, the beginning of while that wasn't an Imagine movie, it was the beginning of the partnership that was going to wind up being Imagine Entertainment.
Go ahead, Brian.
And it was really interesting in that there was a moment I know Ron thought he was going to get fired. He thought the studio was firing him. And I think he felt like I don't know if they were or they weren't, but I think he felt like I was protecting him and that he wouldn't get fired. And also Michael Keaton definitely thought he was getting fired because he was chewing gum in every scene. And it
bothered the studio.
Yeah, it bothered the studio. Ron says, I'll cut around.
What a good note.
But anyway, so... but it was a really fun event for us. I mean, it was great. It was a really amazing journey because it was such an underdog, David and Goliath type of experience to get that movie made. And Splash was even harder.
Even harder. And when we came through with those two experiences, I mean, really the friendship and the partnership was galvanized by all of that. And then, just a couple of years later, we realized that we were both separately being very, very entrepreneurial with our own, individual production companies. And if we just kind of merged them, there might be a way to simplify, focus, and be, a lot more dynamic. And look, in a lot of ways, through this excitement, now, as Brian was saying earlier, broadening number of outlets and platforms and so forth, it sort of feels like another new moment of opportunity. It's fun, and our executives at Imagine feel it, and it's you don't quite know where it's going, but we're back involved in digital. We tried to get into that in '99 with Pop.com. We were always wanting to be in the digital world.
Just the technology
too
wasn't
early.
there yet.
No, it wasn't there yet. Now we're back in with a company involved with a company called Newform, and it's really fun to interface with those digital content creators and. Things like this project and others. I'm doing a Beatles documentary, which is exciting. And then there's still, there are movies. We got In the Heart of the Sea coming out, and we just finished Inferno with Tom Hanks and Mina with Tom Cruise. And so the company is going gangbusters. And of course, TV is so exciting right now.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's years ago. I used to hang out on the Newhart set because a friend of mine was on the show.
Oh, great show.
And I would have these conversations with these guys because I was such a comedy nerd. I was just absorbing, Tom Poston and Newhart and Dick Martin. But Dick said one of the most bummer things to me, which I was like, so what is it, you've achieved this thing, what does it feel like? And he goes, well, it's really only fun on the way up. And then
it just plateaus. Like he just seemed like it just wasn't as fun anymore. Like, you know, when he was doing Laugh-In and all that, like that was the meteoric. But then now, so it's very comforting to me to hear you be excited, you know, after all the stuff that you've done, without going, I mean, you know, whatever.
Neither of us are really constructed that way. I think even on I think we like challenges.
Yeah.
And stories are challenges. They're little puzzles. And they take all these different sort of sizes and shapes and forms, like we were talking about New Form, which is these are pieces that are 3 to 5 minutes. But television can be 22 minutes. Now Empire's whatever length it is, but it's short. It's slightly longer content because there's the way they're sponsor television now.
Sure.
The modern way of sponsoring television. It's going to really change a lot. But I think we feel like we're good at it, and we like doing it.
And we like the partnerships. We like the creative collaborations with whether, you know, and it's been great for us to be able to be in the comedy world at an elite level and turn around and be able to work with the greatest dramatic, you know, artists as well, or, you know, now interfacing and doing research with scientists and so forth, which is, you know, we've been doing that for the last 20 years, sort of starting with the first movie that we did inspired by real events, which was, you know, Apollo 13.
Right.
And over the years, we've been both attracted to that kind of storytelling in that genre.
And is it getting involved with NASA, was that just a thing that you had always wanted to do, or did the project spawn the relationship, or was it the reverse?
Project spawned the relationship. We had an executive working with us named Michael Bostic, whose father, Jerry, was a mission controller. And so Michael brought us the story and said, Jim Lovell's about to publish this book. This is a really exciting chapter. And people had really forgotten about Apollo 13. I vaguely remembered it. Mm-hmm. And I said, I will cop to the fact that I said, boy, I don't know, it's kind of... What do you think, Brian? I'm not sure whether an audience is going to be into this. Look, The Right Stuff's as good a space movie as you could make, and people didn't really show up. And Brian read it, and I got to say, he said, this is a great story. It's a thriller, and just got it. And we chased it. It was really competitive to get the rights to it. I remember we were up in the middle of the night. I was on the East Coast. You were on the West Coast. We were calling.
It went into one of those Hollywood bidding wars where every studio was bidding on it. And those are things that are sort of sometimes they're sort of artificial momentum that generates it, but it became one of these things that we had to like close in the middle of the night, 2:00 in the morning, and get it all done.
But that's the thing is figuring out how to balance the creative process with the navigating the business process, which navigating the business is literally like a death trap for creativity. It is almost, it's almost designed to destroy anything creative when things start getting into business affairs mode and people and the business coming in, or you can do this, you can't do this, or, how do you navigate, how do you keep the creative vision whole while trying to get through all that process?
I think that we don't take rejection personally. I don't know if Ron does, but I don't take it personally. I just feel like, and I've had tons of it thrown on me. Like on the movie Splash, probably 500 rejections. I mean, rejection after rejection after rejection. But then I just, for a simple thing, I watched that Steven Spielberg, who's a real, genuine artistic, artist and prodigy. He'd made Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He did Jaws and Raiders, and the studio put E.T. into turnaround. So I thought, this is fucking ridiculous. I mean, for me to start crying about someone not wanting to do my next movie after Splash had really been gigantically successful, I thought, this is just the game we're in. Everyone is going to second guess the stuff we really want to make, and they're going to try to hire Ron for the stuff they want to make. And he'll find the middle. He'll find his balance. And for myself as a producer, the same thing. I'm always flattered that people want to meet with us and offer Ron movies, and I'm always able to get the best shot possible. But they still say no, and I'm cool with it. I wish they didn't, but I'm cool with it. I just accept it like smog.
The business really
Spoken by two guys who grew up in the valley when the smog was like,
it's
completely
bad.
as bad as
the hills
it
are
could
just
be.
trapping it in.
Yeah.
This is okay to breathe, right? When you're landing in that gray cloud.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Are you sure this is that? It's probably fine. Why would they let us live here if it wasn't fine, right, guys?
One more lap, Coach. What about the smog alert? One more lap.
I can't get up. I just, I'm so. There's no the way that we look back at the 1930s. When we're like, those morons were sleeping on asbestos while they were waiting to go to work at the nail factory. Now people are gonna look back and go, they held their cellular phones to their faces? Are you serious? I mean, it's like so many of those things that I feel
absolutely.
like. So and that's where science comes back in. We're like, hopefully they'll figure this out. And I guess there is an acceptable level of risk that we live with every day that I think just sort of runs in the background.
Well, look, it's a pretty fascinating time because clearly there's this revolution is having seismic impact on people's psyches and the way they live and the way they think. And the globe is coming together on the one hand, on the other hand, in some ways separating further because of the have-nots as it relates to technology. And so there are all kinds of dynamics that are in flux, and it ripples to the entertainment world. It certainly has impacted the economy. It's fascinating to watch, and I think for a couple of people like us who've had some decades of work, and it's kind of came for us, I think, at a sort of a perfect time because it does present a new specific set of questions, and it's not about doing the same thing we did 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's everything we learned about stories that's relevant, but what's exciting is what our audience is looking for now. It's changing so quickly. There's as Brian said, talent has a little more control now than they've had before, and it's more about a direct relationship with their particular audience. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. It's always been there to a degree, but as you said, the gatekeepers and the middlemen were a little more in the way of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, how well would Nerdist do without you?
I hope we never find out.
Look at Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart, he really made Comedy Central happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's individuals that are now defining the content.
Yeah, because ultimately, people don't necessarily care where they get their content. They just want good content.
They just want good content.
As consumers, we're spoiled now because we can get it whenever we want, however we want, and there's a billion choices. There's an approaching infinite number of choices.
And you can DVR anything. You can get it on YouTube. There's unlimited access to it, and you can do it any time. You don't have to do it that day. You can do it. And as you know, the numbers in TV, it's live +3, live +7. So it's... I'm telling you, the Nerdist wouldn't be anything without you.
That's what I keep telling them. But this idea of the way that you were talking about Empire and the relationship that you have to sponsors. I mean, there's definitely a shift happening because this antiquated idea of the way that television is measured, the metric is flawed because there is certainly a cultural penetration that exists that is not represented by that one linear number of the Nielsen rating. Right. Like you know when the conversations are more about something online. When there's a general awareness of something beyond what that one story will tell. So, how do you find how do people start creating relationships with sponsors that are sort of very old? There's still a lot of them are still running on the old system. How do you convince them? No. That's not how people are consuming things anymore. Let's create for lack of a better word, a holistic approach to viewing and cover all the platforms to deliver to sponsors.
Well, it's this running conversation, and everybody's got the same couple of questions, and then and then you've got a little group that's kind of clinging to the old way always, and making an argument that it still holds up, but clearly there's an evolution happening. But this bizarre thing about it for me is that when I was a kid on the Andy Griffith Show, we had to do commercials for General Foods, and you can go on YouTube and watch old TV shows and see all the characters turning to the camera. Even at the beginning of the episode, this is before the Andy Griffith Show, and doing a commercial about a product and then launching into their show. It used to, when the Andy Griffith Show sold, it actually sold to General Foods before it sold to CBS.
Wow!
So in an odd way,
it's coming back.
It's kind of rotating back.
I'm surprised it wasn't like Hi, I'm Opie Taylor for Winston Cigarettes. Like,
Good for you.
they give me the vitamins I need to grow up strong.
Light up, Ope. Look how young I look. Let's have a father-son talk.
I think Opie took all my smokes again. Like, there's just that was. It just seemed like everything was fair game. But yeah, that dynamic that seems like it's coming back. Why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't a sponsor? And essentially that's kind of what Breakthrough is as well.
Yeah.
Like GE came in and invested to make this thing, and it's about them but not about them. And I think those types of moves are the way that entertainment is. That's where everything's going.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, there's such a subtlety now with so many outlets to gain information immediately that, I mean, it's the authentic moment that people are able to detect immediately. And so, I think what GE feels like is they feel like they're in this space anyway. In other words, they are out there trying to solve problems on the planet. And they feel like, I'm sure they feel, if the show is good, people will feel that we're part of it.
Sure.
Because it doesn't really say it, but they'll feel it. And so it's a lot of these things are sort of actionable. I mean, if you've seen the tech business, it's really that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the guy Travis from Uber, by the way, who I know, he grew up in Granada Hills. He went to Granada Hills High School. I went to Chatsworth. Ron was in Burbank. So it's all possible, see?
Oh, what? Glorious downtown Burbank.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I feel like I have a memory of you being on Saturday Night Live and Eddie Murphy chastising you and calling you Opie Cunningham,
yeah.
and which I thought was such a brilliant way for you to publicly say, I know you think of me as these characters, but fuck you, I am not these characters.
Well, Eddie kind of improvised that, and it was that was certainly the overall sort of spirit of that appearance on the show. But then he took out a fucking razor and started trying to shave my mustache off on TV.
Wow, I do remember that. That's crazy.
But
Andy Warhol also, who was a friend of mine, wanted to shave Ron's
these guys didn't like my mustache, right? I don't know. I was just trying to look
Andy
older.
Warhol thought, Ron Howard, he's an American icon. He's like, I want to see him both ways, with and without.
Andy wanted to see me both ways. Oh, jeez.
Well, let's. I guess. I mean,
right, well, keep going on your track.
No, I just think the idea of Andy Warhol shaving off your mustache as an art project is an interesting idea.
I should have done it.
It goes back.
Brian floated it out to me, and I just kind of, I don't know. I wasn't paying attention.
But you know what though? I think that does underscore.
Oh, Ron, it only would have meant about $100 million of art to you.
Oh, maybe I should have let him.
That's the fish story.
But I think it does kind of underscore that idea of keeping your head down and continuing to do what you want in the face of people trying to put you in a box. Well, no, you're this guy. How can you do this? Yeah. Well, because I can. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And what was it that kept you going at that time? Was it pure passion? Was it the fact that you had a stable relationship, or like what types of things kept you going?
Well, all of it. But as I became a director, I knew that I'd spent 20 years, my entire childhood, basically being on one television series or another. From 1960 to 1980, I was on a TV show, whether it was the Andy Griffith Show or the Smith Family with Henry Fonda or then Happy Days, for 17 and a half out of those 20 years. Wow. And I love movies. I love stories. I love all kinds of stories. And I did not want to be branded. I intentionally did not want to be the comedy guy,
right,
or the fantasy guy, and so that was just my ambition, and I followed that path by continually going back to the list of my favorite movies, and I would sort of say, which I want movies that could be on that list. I want to find stories that could be on that list, and because of my taste, it's a very eclectic list. So I recognize that it's a little confusing for somebody to sort of follow my filmography, because let's say you really think The Grinch or Willow or something is a blast and a great fantasy movie or is something. How are you going to feel about Frost Nixon?
Right.
Is that what you want to see me doing, or would you rather I was doing more Willows? Vice versa.
But you have to. But it's funny. In as much as people want to put you in a box, if you allow yourself to be put in a box, then you burn out faster because people get it. But I feel like you have to make those wild choices.
I had been in those boxes, and I just didn't want to live that way. And I'm also not naturally a very adventuresome person, but I began to realize that each of these movies could be kind of an amazing life adventure.
Sure.
And so I just kept pushing it and just kept embracing it. I didn't want to be like pretentiously shocking about it. But I wanted it to evolve, and I wanted to broaden my viability as a collaborator. So I wanted the elite writers to want to work with me. I wanted the elite actors to believe that they could flourish under my direction. And in my partnership with Brian, he had similar ambitions. And so we're very different guys. We approach things from slightly different perspectives. But the thing that we always have in common is this kind of goal to find something that can cut through. Find something fresh. Find something that has a point of view. Tell it well. And it doesn't always work, but we've got a good batting average as a result.
What do you like on a set? What is when the first day of shooting? I mean, obviously you've done a lot of work getting up to that first day of shooting, but what's your approach when all the actors are there, the crew is there, you're ready to start? I mean, like, is it? Do you feel like, okay, this has to be a controlled environment, or do you let things breathe the way that they're going to happen? Like, how are you on the?
I think that he's done so much preparation that when he gets to the set, he's amazingly comfortable and relaxed and confident. All of those things. And in fact, he likes little distractions. Like, Brian, talk about something other than the movie. Let's talk about whatever, anything, other problems, let's hear about this TV show, whatever. He's so confident, and it's like it's really. You should go on one of his sets because he will talk to you, whatever. I mean, and really connect with you, like be really focused. And then the minute it's action is like another superpower of level of focus. It's really fun to watch, actually.
Yeah, I mean, because especially when you have a collection, and again, I mean, the list, as I completely slobber all over you. Parenthood, I think, is also not only one of the best comedies, but also one of the most human, touching films.
Oh, thanks.
That even as a kid, I watched that movie 30 times. I got sucked in by the Rick Moranis and the Steve Martin of it.
Yeah.
But then the story of it, it's such a beautiful story, and everyone's so wonderful in it. So how do you, when you have that many brilliant people in one area, what is it that you do to make them comfortable? Because they're all experienced. They need to see you as their captain. So how do you establish that with them?
Well, by then, of course, that was Gans and Mandel, who also did Night Shift,
right.
Splash, Gung Ho.
Bob Lou Gans, Bob Mandel and Lowell Gans.
And Lowell Gans. And so they were right at the height of their powers. And we all so related to that story. We all really contributed to that. Brian, we had these great pitch sessions. And,
during the writer's strike. Now it's a statute of limitations, but it was... during the writer's strike where nobody was allowed to write, and we just got a bungalow at the Bel Air Hotel and kind of hashed it out.
Yeah, and
against orders.
Against orders. But
see, we were defiant too.
But by that time, I was very confident, and one of the things that I love to do is connect with the cast and understand the way they work. And it's not exactly a perfect process, but I can see what Keanu Reeves, what's making him tick, and how he's connecting with his character. Steve Martin and Rick Moranis, different animals all together.
Diane Wiest is so flooring
she's
in that
great.
movie. Yeah.
So that's fun for me to work with a group like that and help create an environment where they can flourish. And I suppose that's what I sort of feel that I'm kind of the editor in chief of the movie.
Sure.
And I'm trying to lead these people to do their best work, whether that's the cinematographer and the production designer, the composer, or certainly the actors. But when I was younger, really young, 23, 24, I felt like I had to control everything, and I had to be decisive, and I had to already have the answers, and I had to be tough. And my work got a lot better when I learned how to be more collaborative. And now I really flourish in that. I love it. I love the excitement of a problem being solved, and it doesn't have to be my solution. I'm even more excited when it's not. It's like a gift. I didn't have to think of that.
Yeah.
Somebody else came up with a brilliant idea.
Yeah, because I think it's one thing to be able to get an amazing performance out of, a newer actor, But when you can take someone who's been, like that's been their profession for 20, 30 years, and you guys can surprise each other, I mean, that to me seems like those are the moments, the gems.
Well, let's talk about Parenthood for 1 second on that count. So you got Keanu Reeves, who was young then, eager, hadn't really done a comedy. It was before Bill and Ted's, I think, or Bill and Ted's maybe hadn't been seen yet. But he really wanted this. He auditioned for it. He won it. He was really great to work with. But not a comic, and yet he had a lot of comedy moments, and very authentic and attacking it with a lot of energy, and I really enjoyed it. But it was uneven. You had to capture it in a way. It was a little bit elusive, and then all of a sudden it was kind of fantastic, and I loved it. Then I had Jason Robards, and one of the first days of shooting with Jason Robards, he's doing this scene with Tom Hulse where he's supposed to be it's one of the most dramatic moments where he realizes his son is just a disappointment, and that's the way it goes. And he wasn't very emotional in his reaction. And I went up to him, and I didn't know how to talk to him. He was a senior actor, a great actor, award winner in every category, 2 Emmys, Tonys, Oscars. And I said, I think here we need this is a moment where your son he's letting you down. And I was sort of talking him to the moment, and he just reached out and touched me, and he said, Ron, do you want a sadder face? And I thought, okay, now here's the veteran fucking with the young director. Now the next take, he's going to make a big sad face, and then I'll have to come in and say maybe somewhere in the middle. And we rolled cameras, and it was the take that's in the movie that was so elegant and so true. And I realized, here's somebody who has reached a point where he has such access to those gears. He has such access to himself that it can be as simple as sadder face, and that's not going to come off as broad and fake.
Right.
It's going to be entirely organic. And so this journey of working with actors is always really fascinating, but I learned a lot on that day.
Well, I think, one of the things that I've noticed is that you are masterful at sort of breaking into the humanity of something. What was the human experience like for Apollo 13? What is the human experience for that family in Parenthood, or even Cocoon? What is the human experience for that, or the human experience of running, a call-girl ring out of the morgue? But the moment where Keanu Reeves, where you see him for a second, where he talks about how you need a license for everything but to be a dad, and how his dad woke him up by flicking cigarettes. Yeah. That's such an amazing moment that. You just, this character, that was a time when that kind of like, whoa, I'm this surfer guy, that burnout, it was being done a lot, and that was the first time that I'd ever seen someone humanize that type of a character.
Well, it was great writing. What you're talking about is that perspective is another thing that Brian and I share just in terms of sensibility, whether it's the subjects, whatever subject, it's sort of what's it like to be there? What's it like to be that person? Brian talks about it a lot in terms of like power, and I look at it more like the test, the way the character's being tested. But the upshot is kind of the same. It's to try to give the audience a sense of what the world is like and what it's like from this character's perspective, and to experience the story.
Was there ever I assume you met probably all of your heroes. Were you able to, the ones that were alive? Did you kind of dig around for advice, or was there what were some of the most valuable advice you got from people that you respected?
It's often advice from me. He did. No, it's a great question. You knew John Wayne.
John Wayne told me that John Ford always said, take the emotional moment up to about 80% and let the audience finish it.
Oh, wow. Jeez, that's good.
Holy shit.
Never let it go all the way 100% to the emotional conclusion. Always hold back something to let the audience...
That is a layered... John Wayne told me that John Ford told him. That is a very incredibly layered...
yeah.
And did you really understand what he meant at the time?
Yeah, I did. And I haven't always followed it. And sometimes I regret it.
But with comedy, it's very hard, and because... comedy is a relationship to your audience, and sometimes they will tell you what's too much or what's not too much, and why do you think that comedy doesn't get as much respect from I don't know, I just feel like shouldn't more comedies be nominated for Oscars? Like, comedy's really fucking hard. Like, why?
Because they don't get, I mean it was sort of like what goes, is it the cart or the horse? But it doesn't get respect because it doesn't get awards. Now I remember on Splash, I was nominated to be part of one, as part of the writers, and of course we didn't win. Like A Place in the Heart wins. Places in the Heart. Robert Benton wins. I mean, it just seems so obvious.
But that was pretty amazing to even get a nomination on a comedy script like that. But that was sort of.
So why doesn't comedy? I don't. I guess it's just the delivery system itself doesn't feel as serious. Like, people like serious stuff.
So it feels like escapism.
Comedy also, I think, has its roots more in vulgarity, in the sense that not like dirty, but just vulgar in the sense. Like, the common people like vaudeville.
I have a thought now that I hadn't ever said or thought about even. But here's the thing. Consumers, people that watch movies, first of all, they like to believe that they themselves are good people. So they always score movies higher if they can relate to a person that is doing a good thing.
Sure.
So in Apollo 13, even when it was like 5 hours long, it got really high ratings. Because everybody wants to think of themselves as having the power, the strength, the ability, the selflessness to be an astronaut. Of course you rate it really high. But some comedian like Jim Carrey catching a fart on fire, no matter how funny that was, it's just not going to rate as high.
And the Oscar goes to fart on fire.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's about that. I think it's about self-imaging.
Yeah. What have you? Is there anything that you've seen as a through line for? I think I asked you this question because you've talked to so many, but you've worked with everyone. Is there a through line that you think that defines what a successful person is,
Yes.
what they do, how they maintain?
I landed on this early because there's a period in my life from like around, 17 to 25 where I wound up working with Henry Fonda, Jimmy Stewart, and John Wayne. I directed Bette Davis, and it suddenly dawned on me that very different personalities, but here's what they had in common. They're all people in their 70s, and all they want to do is fulfill the possibility. They have such respect for the medium. They're willing to just kill themselves at that point in their lives. They don't know any other way but to work the shit out of it and understand it and not miss the opportunity that each of these scenes offers up. And it's work ethic. It over and over and over again. It just comes back to work ethic. How much do you care? How much do you care about what it says? How much do you care about how the way the audience responds? How much do you care about your ability to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I worked hard today. I lived up to the possibility of the scene, the moment, and the medium.
And so what do you do as the captain of the ship, as a director? Obviously not. I didn't. With someone like Bette Davis, or even with any, I don't even know with someone who when you have to make your calls that day and you have to get your shots done, if someone is ever difficult or in the way, or it's like, oh come on, can you just please work with us on this? Like, how do you get around when?
Well, I'm not the boys' vice principal. My job is to not make everybody get along and feel good. My job is to get the scene to work, and so whatever that entails. It could be cajoling, it could be confronting, it could be sympathizing, it could be looking the other way. But at the end of the day, it's just if the logic of the objectives of the scenes always trumps everything.
Sure.
And so you talk to an artist, however they might feel about the objectives of the scene, and you've got a good chance of getting there.
I just think, when you have a group of actors, it's probably like having a group of kids, and if they feel like they can walk all over you, they probably will in a lot of cases. So how do you set the tone of like, hey, we're nice, but don't fuck with us because we have to get this done?
Well, first of all, directors themselves have to create these imaginary walls or lines that where the talent doesn't jump over the wall and be mutinous, or they don't disrespect you. So Ron is very good at, certainly because of his track record. Artists will respect him. They respect his choices, but they do really respect and they can feel his work ethic. So they don't want to just do anything that could disrespect him. So therefore, they don't jump the wall. Now, there are some directors that you've read about in history where they jump the wall.
Yeah.
But For the most part, I mean, that definitely doesn't happen with Ron. The other thing is, and Tom Hanks likes to tease Ron, like, because you never, ever see Ron Howard angry, except when people waste time or lazy and waste time. If they're lazy and waste time, that's when Tom and Hanks, God damn it, I'm so mad
at you. I mean, it's, to watch, I know I have my group of friends, my actor, comedian friends, and it's been fun to sort of watch all of us kind of make our own roads and, oh, you got to do that, oh, that's really amazing, oh, that's it. But when you look back, oh, Tom Hanks and Michael Keaton and all these amazing people. I mean, you guys really all got to see each other. It was the second part of your career, but in a sense, you did have to start over.
Yeah.
So you guys have all really started together, and so what is that experience like of looking around and seeing your friends and going, hey, I think I was onto something, and we're all still doing this, and that's amazing.
It's really rewarding, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really rewarding. I mean, with Tom Hanks, of course, we've done. I think I've worked with him 5 or 6 times.
And I was so glad to see Keaton come roaring back into everybody's
Birdman was
everybody's mind.
incredible.
Birdman,
yeah.
And I haven't seen the movie that's coming out. I hear he's great.
Yeah,
in that
he's
too.
on fire. It's so great.
Yeah.
It is great to see our friends. That we were part of their early part of their career.
Well, Brian, especially with Eddie Murphy, he'd done a lot of great movies, and Eddie was a big star.
Yeah.
But it just kind of kept.
Yeah, I think
kept
I've
evolving.
made seven movies with him and a television show.
I read a really fantastic article with him because it seems like he's sort of nosing around to start doing stuff again, and he made this really interesting point where he said, yeah, people just assume that if you're taking some time off and relaxing that you've hit the skids. He's like, I'm just... I've written like 4 things, and it seems like he might dabble in stand-up again or something, but I don't know.
He and I have something we're going to figure out together, Eddie and I.
Oh, good.
It'll be really amazing.
I think when I talk about comedy not being recognized, but his performance in Bowfinger, to me, is one of the best comedy performances of all time.
Wasn't that amazing? Yeah.
He's the most unaware, like his character. There are some people who play comedy and you're like, they know they're doing comedy. He disappears into those characters.
Eddie's a genius. Let me tell you, going back to when I did Saturday Night Live and he was on it, and he was already, he was super hot. I mean, and we sort of tried to get him interested in Night Shift, and he wasn't. Yeah. So, I mean, at 18 or 19, he was very hot. Everybody knew that. But I came on to do the show. He couldn't be there for the first couple of days because he was doing some press on 48 hours or something. He came in. The first day, he was kind of low-key. At the read-through, kind of mumbled it. Wasn't much going on. And I witnessed this guy click in a way. And by show night, he was rewriting on his feet. It was perfect. I fumbled a line. He saved me. And then I kind of came back with an okay line, and he kind of gave me a wink. This 19-year-old guy was on another plane, on another level, and he can do just about anything that he decides he wants to do.
Is there anyone out there that you're like, oh, I really want to work with that guy or this lady or this, or who's out there?
Well, so many. I mean, there's just there's so much talent. I mean, I think fascinating. Jake Gyllenhaal is suddenly turning. He's just doing one interesting performance after another. I've always wanted to connect with Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
But there are there are just so many people. Bryce, my daughter, had such a great experience with Chris Pratt. I'd really like to try to find something to do with Chris and my daughter one of these days.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the other thing too. Is that how do you? Because I think. Sometimes people go, well, why don't you just go make a thing? Why don't you just make a thing? We're like, well, it's not really that easy.
No.
Like there are a lot of steps. Like how many projects do you guys have for everything that people have seen? Are there 10 that people haven't seen yet?
More than 10.
Yeah, there's more. Yeah, we have a lot of television shows, and more to come that are going to be out next season. There's a lot. We have a lot. We're interested in many things,
and your son Seth Gable, right?
Son-in-law
Seth Gable is on, and he's fantastic on Salem.
He's great on Salem. He's a really good actor. Yeah, he's also a good writer. It turns out.
It's you're so surrounded by creativity at all times, and I hope you feel the indirect, the sort of the shadow of that outside of just exactly what you're making, but just all the people around you that are sort of caught up in it too.
Well, thanks. That feels good. And again, there is something about this moment. I don't know if it's because all my kids are grown. I think it's a combination of where our company is, our interests, what the business is offering, and sort of our moment, my moment, kind of in terms of how available I can be to these various projects. But I feel what you're saying more now than I think I ever have, because I'm just can be ever so slightly less myopic and look a little more at the big picture of all the different things that we're getting to work on.
Because it's I think it would probably melt your brain if you really thought about it. But when you think about all the people that you probably put up here in your life, these like big directors that you look up to. I mean, you guys, you've done more than them. I mean, like, you think of the great directors, though, like maybe 3 or 4 movies, big movies, but to see how much television and how many films. I mean, your IMDb page is like, oh, that one, oh, fuck, that one, oh, that one too.
Yeah.
I mean, that is maybe it's best that you don't think about it too much.
I think it's best.
But even if you had just made Arrested Development, I mean that show was so heartbreaking for me to lose, and so happy to see it come back to Netflix. Like, what was it that made you feel like, well, I need to be directly involved? I need to narrate this. I need to be that directly involved.
Well, I was a big proponent of a narrator. And sort of this style that I thought was kind of represented what was then a kind of new grammar in TV, which was sort of faux documentary sort of look, a kind of sociological look at this fucked up family. And Mitch really embraced it. So Mitch had the family, and I had this sort of style in mind of how we might go at it. I thought we could be, that comedically we could be more dense. I used to reference The Simpsons a little bit as well, and so we tried the narration, and I did it as a temp, and then they tested it. And Mitch called me up. I was shooting The Missing, up in Santa Fe, freezing somewhere with Kate Blanchett and Tommy Lee Jones on horses somewhere, and Mitch called and it said, "Well, Ron, I got good news and bad news for you." And I said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "The good news is, it looks like we're going to get on the air, and the show tested great." And I said, well, then what's the bad news? The bad news for you is that the highest testing element was the narrator.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So you got to do it. And I said, okay. So I'm so glad it worked out that way. Although I keep getting I get $2,500 a week, and I've never gotten a raise, and I'm getting a little pissed off about it.
I think if anyone ever has the experience to hang out with Jim Vallely and Mitch Hurwitz together, Vallely is legitimately one of the funniest people you could hang out with.
I'm glad you mentioned Jim, an amazing unsung hero, and they're at it now. They're trying to tackle new episodes and a new approach. So, and it's just that the cast has become such a group of all stars that it's hard to know if you can get them together.
Of course. And by the way, you mentioned working with Tommy Lee Jones. He seems like the kind of guy that you could just walk up to every day and just pinch his cheeks and go, "Hello, Tommy Lee Jones. Oh, look at this sad face. Oh, you're so..."
If you didn't care about the teeth in your mouth or your nose, I think you could do that. What a brilliant guy. Amazing guy, because he can turn around, he can have he's a highly educated guy.
Sure.
And so he can be having this erudite conversation with an academic who might be visiting him that day, and then turn around and, without speaking down in any way, shape, or form, have the earthiest, most connected conversation with the wranglers about what they're doing with the horses that day and how they're managing it. And he's an amazing intellect.
So how do you tackle a personality that's a very strong personality and get them to do what you need?
Well, you don't have to tackle him, because you're applying his energy and his talent, and once he sees that there's that kind of give and take, actors want to be directed, they want to be guided, they want to be supported. They don't necessarily want to be bossed around, and you can always navigate and negotiate, any creative differences with people who are in that elite caliber, of that elite caliber. I've found, so. You might find them to be prickly and annoying, or in some sort of reaction that they're having at some point, but not creatively. And this is the thing that I always have in common.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think in your whole career, you've only fired one actor, right? Do you count that guy as you fired him?
In my whole career, because there was a little firing before you and I partnered up. maybe 3.
Okay,
Maybe 3.
Wow. Well, I think in that track record, that's not bad.
I get it. Look, people respect the process, or they wouldn't be at that level.
Sure.
And they also they know how to get through a movie, and they want to deliver, they want to score, and that's what I want. So we have a hell of a lot in common going in, and we may not say things the same way, we may not approach issues the same way, but again, I don't count myself as the one who has to guide etiquette on the set. As long as a breakdown in etiquette is not limiting what we can achieve that day, and so
kind of last question here is, what for you is the most difficult genre to tackle, or is it all the same?
Comedy. Yeah, comedy's the hardest thing. It's binary. Yeah. You're either hilarious and people are laughing, or it's a big disappointment.
I mean, how do you even know when you're in the edit and you've seen the same jokes 50 times and you don't even know what words are anymore? Like, how are you able to...
Well, you have to be with audiences. You have to keep showing it to audiences. Because when you're living through other people, beyond just the laughter that you'll hear, which is completely visceral, when you're living it through someone else's psyche that's around, that it makes it a fresh perspective for you. But I did have one, because I also produced a lot of comedies, all these Eddie Murphy, Nutty Professors, and Life, and as you said, Liar, Nutty, with Jim Carrey. There was one moment, we did a lot of successful comedies together, Ron and I, and there were these moments where I'd go, God, that's really funny, that's super funny, But then there was a moment in I'll say in the Nutty Professor 1 with Eddie Murphy that I didn't think anything, where it was just pure, like, into the bloodstream, like, connection. And I thought, well, then that's when it's really funny. Yeah. When there's no thought, or even the afterthought of, wow, that was funny. It's just like reaching you on some really deep level, and that's that immediate.
The only other thing that I would say is there are moments. Making a drama is so much about the story and then the casting and creating the environment where the moments can come to life. But there are moments where actors are really bearing their souls, and that's uncomfortable to be around, because it's thrilling, and it's often really gratifying afterward, and sometimes the actor feels it too. But being the one that kind of has to coax and guide and create the environment for this thing that we all know has to happen, but we also all know it's painful. It's not easy. Those are moments. I don't wake up in the morning thrilled that we're tackling that scene today.
Well, because on an emotional level, you're basically walking in and going, taking your pants off and spread your legs. The most. And I think most people would rather do that than have to bear. I always ask actors, like, how do you mop off the emotional residue? Because your brain doesn't entirely know the difference. You still have to feel those things.
Well, I'm telling you, like Russell Crowe on Beautiful Mind, who's a brilliant artist, but he put himself through so much to understand what was the journey that guy was on, and to live in those moments that, I don't know if he slept a night the whole movie. He was it was just the creative charge, the electricity was just kind of amazing, and he wasn't showy about it. He didn't talk a lot about it, but just the range of performance options that he was creating was amazing. And then you have a guy like Tom Hanks, who is like Joe DiMaggio in center field. He just makes it look like nothing's happening much. And then you're in the editing room, and you're shooting on the day and saying, "Well, that was good. Oh, that was funny. Oh, that was good. That was just about what it was supposed to be." And you get there and you put it all together, and it's a Tom Hanks performance, and you kind of don't know how it even happened.
So he came to 80%.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being
care.
here. It's so good to talk to you guys.
This was fun.
Oh, my God, yes. Hey, Ron, we end the podcast by telling people to enjoy their burrito. It's sort of our mantra. I feel like your voice would tackle that better than I would. Would you just tell people, enjoy your burrito?
Enjoy your burrito.
Perfect! Thank you.
Now leaving Nerdist.com. Enjoy your burrito.